Cha-ching! Hey guys, thanks for watching. In my last video, we went over what a fiberglass fillet is used for, and today we are going to cover some of the materials commonly used to make them. First up is wood flour. Just like it sounds, it's simply wood that has been ground down to a fine texture, similar to baking flour. Not to be confused with sawdust, which will lead to a really lumpy fillet, wood flour is very consistent and absorbs resin easily. It is readily available and not very expensive. Old school thought is a wood flour fillet can absorb water, but that's a myth, as it soaks up the resin and is encapsulated by it. I've experimented in the past with submerging a sample, and there was no increase in mass. Next up is fumed silica. It's sometimes called cabosil, and is a super lightweight powder, so be careful not to breathe it in. It's commonly used as an ingredient in everything from resins to toothpaste to even ketchup. Fumed silica is readily available and works great as a thickening agent to help prevent sag. Next, we have glass microspheres, also sometimes called Q-cell. It appears as a fine and smooth white powder. They easily blend into resins to create a very smooth paste. Often used along with modern composite cores, it is stocked at most supply warehouses, but is typically more expensive than wood flour. Glass microspheres are also used a lot in fairing compounds because of its low density, which makes it easier to sand. This brings me to my personal mix preference. I like to start with a base of glass microspheres, if available, or wood flour, and add a little bit of fumed silica for sag control. Years ago, I started adding a little bit of milled fibers to the mix. It may look like a powder, but if you look real close, they are actually tiny fiberglass fibers. I found adding milled fibers greatly increased the strength and flexibility of my fillets. Okay, let's make some samples. I made a quick mold by clamping two boards together and covered them with packing tape. I'm using some 2:1 epoxy for this test, but the process is the same for other resins. This will take about 6 to 8 hours to cure, and then we'll check back on it. Let me take a moment to say there are other materials that you could use for making fillets, but these are the most mainstream. And my mix is just my personal preference. Others may have a different recipe they like depending on the project. All done, let's go. First up is the wood flour. It has a rougher texture, but is pretty strong. And while it has some flex to it, it's still fairly brittle when used by itself. Our next sample is the fumed silica, or cabosil. It has a rougher texture like the wood flour, and it is pretty strong, but it still has a good amount of flex to it. The downside, though, is it can be really tough to sand if need be, so it's not my favorite choice when used alone. Next, we have the glass microspheres, also known as Q-cell. They have a nice smooth texture, and it is lightweight, but when used by themselves, it will make a weak and brittle fillet. Last up is my personal fillet mix preference. I used about 60% glass microspheres, 20% fumed silica, and about 20% milled fibers. It makes for a fairly smooth fillet that is strong and has a good amount of flexibility in it. I believe this is a good combination that will allow the fillet to move with the fiberglass and panels as the boat flexes under load. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, and please leave a comment or any questions below and I'll get back to them as soon as I can. Thank you for watching.